Hi, welcome back. It's Robert Briffa, and we're here for our panel discussion. I have David Leahy and Dominic with me to answer your questions and also to discuss leadership of remote workers. So firstly, we have a question from Kate that asks basically, is there any difference between salaries or pay rates in the COVID era versus the non-COVID period? Basically, Kate, I can answer that question. We've seen that there really isn't any differences. It's all about supply and demand. We thought that salaries might have dropped because of an increase of people in the market, but that's not the case, probably because of JobKeeper and JobSeeker. That may change into next year when those payments drop away. But at the moment, we're actually seeing some areas where salaries are increasing because demand has increased. So I hope that answers that question. Marika also asks, basically, should we still be social with our employees? And maybe I could get Dominic to answer this question for you, Marika.
The simple answer is absolutely. You're social with your family at home, you're social with your children. You should be social with the people that you are at work with, because you spend most amount of time with them at work. And I think those social connections are important. But with anything in life, it needs to be managed with some sensitivity and some empathy and some understanding. So yes, my answer is absolutely.
Very good. I hopefully that you rest assured there, Marika, that millennials, they certainly want to be connected. So sort of any extracurricular activities that bring that team together in a stronger way is good to go. So I wanted to ask the panel a question around leadership and remote workers. So I might throw to David first. David, how does a collaborative leader, and you spoke a lot about collaborative leadership, so how does a collaborative leader lead a remote team of people, and particularly those people that are not suited to working remotely? How can you achieve that?
Right, I'm glad I got a nice easy question to start with. We're all learning as we go through managing through this pandemic. And certainly in terms of, as a collaborative leader, it's all about engagement. And so that will need to be conducted remotely, and making sure that there are clear guidelines with regards to how often people are in contact with one another, how often there's communication, how communication is used, etc. In the context of managing or leading remote workers that are not suited to it, I would certainly be recommending that people would use some form of diagnostic tool, as I mentioned during my presentation, some form of diagnostic tool to help you understand those specific attributes that are vital and critical to remote workers. So I'm talking about things such as studies tell us things like openness to experience from the big 5 personality traits. I'm talking about things like discipline. I'm talking about people, understanding people's responsibilities. So your starting point with your remote team would be to understand through some data and perhaps some anonymous surveys to understand specifically what's going on, A, in their environment, and B, in understanding their hardwiring and who they are. And once you're armed with that information, it'll then help you to engage with those people appropriately. And most modern tools nowadays will also help you facilitate that conversation. So it's quite a difficult, challenging conversation to have with an employee, a remote employee, as to those specific attributes. But certainly, as I say, modern tools will help you to facilitate that conversation. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And Dominic, what type of tools would you suggest that a successful leader of millennials or and if they're working from home, which a lot are now, and they've even been brought into organisations without even coming through the front door, that they've been recruited over the internet, over Zoom or Skype or whatever. How can we communicate effectively with millennials that are working remotely, that and again, may not be suited from a personality perspective to do so?
I think you'll be very amazed in terms of what people are suited towards and how resilient they are. And I think that's what constantly surprises me every day in life. Resilience. We went from a generation who could never ever consider the concept of flexible working or working from home to an entire nation and world all sitting at home and working very productively and efficiently. We are resilient. The tools that we can use are enormous. I mean, there's a wealth of, there's Zoom, there's Microsoft Teams, there are so many things, but I don't think it's the tools that are as important as our awareness of our senses. And I think people long to have touch and feel and connection. And we need to be very, very aware in terms of when we are communicating with people, what do you read in terms of emotions? Have that camera on. Try and gauge that in your conversations. Listen, ask questions, involve. And I think involving is a challenge because you maybe get 30 people on a Zoom call, but ask for opinions. Set aside time for various aspects of the meeting so that you have that involvement and have that discussion and it becomes collaborative. And I think that's where leaders come to the forefront. Like I said, it's all about facilitating. It's not about yes and no.
Sure, fantastic. And so, if the millennials and Generation Z is the bulk of our, or going to be the bulk of our workforce, obviously leaders are going to, we want our leaders to come out of those generations. So can we coach millennials to become leaders, or are they just born that way? Dominic, sorry.
I believe there is potential in everyone. And that's the basis of how I operate. Everyone's got potential. Not everyone aspires to be a leader, but a lot aspire to be leaders. And yes, can you coach it? I most definitely think you can. It's about providing the right sort of experiences. And we are living in a world where things are at our fingertips and we have opportunities to fast track people's experience. I reached where I reached after 20 years of hard work. Doesn't mean to say that the next person coming along the food chain and the next generation can't do it in 5 or can't do it in 2. I certainly believe that they can. So yes, coaching is essential, mentoring is essential, and providing opportunities where people can cram in experiences at a faster pace over a shorter period of time.
Fantastic. And David, how can we identify those leaders, the 20 to 25-year-olds? Is it possible to identify who is a potential leader?
Absolutely. So I'd agree wholeheartedly with what Dominic said. That I do think everyone has potential. I think some studies say it's a third born and two-thirds made in terms of leadership. And as I always start with, it's all about, for me, it's all about information and understanding who people are. And you'll know some of that from your interactions with them, and you'll learn more of that by understanding their levels of resilience and discipline and their desires to be leaders, and really measuring those particular attributes. So things like emotional intelligence is very important in a leader, making sure that you're looking at and understanding those people in your team who, as Dominic says, aspire to leadership, but also possess those basics around emotional intelligence as a key attribute and a key skill. So I think the best approach is to really make sure that you understand the person's attributes, that you've identified specifically what are the attributes required for good leadership within your organization, because it can be different from organization to organization. And then I would recommend, as Dominic has said, giving people experiences within the workplace, but also giving them opportunities to have external professional development and professional coaching. I'm a big fan of coaching myself, being a coach, and so I would definitely encourage organizations to invest in that leadership development with those young leaders that they identify.
Do you think that organizations should automatically assess new people coming into the organization for leadership qualities, even in their first week, do some sort of basic assessment to see if they have what it takes to be a leader, to identify people really early in their career?
I'm not sure I would agree with perhaps assessing somebody in the first week with regards to their leadership potential, but I certainly would have an understanding of the type of person I'm bringing in to the organisation. Obviously, at the moment, we're not sure how this remote work will pan out, but it's likely that we'll get some form of a hybrid type model. So certainly, I would look for the remote elements in people first to understand that they have those. And as part of the organisational development and progression programs, I would have some form of measure to help you understand what those specific people have and what they offer in terms of the required attributes to be a leader.
Sure. And Dominic, you spoke a lot about professional development, professional growth. How long into someone's tenure would you assess them or identify a potential leader in the organisation? How long would they need to be present for you to go, we should do some assessments on this person to see if they've got the leadership capabilities, or we should have a talk to them about developing them as a leader?
It all depends on the organisation, and it all depends on the level, and what appetite is there, and what structures are there internally for growth. I've come from organizations where we start that process at the recruitment stage.
Yes.
So we bring people in, and if we're bringing people into supervisory roles or above, everyone goes through a leadership assessment prior to joining.
Yes.
And that's the norm. I've worked with organizations where that's more an after fact, so people come in. But I think the responsibility is not just at one person's level, and I think this is where we run the risk of saying it's a corporation's responsibility. It's not a corporation's responsibility. It is an individual's responsibility as much as it's a corporate's responsibility to identify opportunities and to identify potential and to identify and harness the difference within teams and bring people on a journey. And you have to bring them on a journey. So in some instances it may take 6 months, in other instances it may take 6 years. But you need to spot it as a leader within your own structure or division, that talent, and be able to harness it. Especially if someone puts their hand up and says, this is something that I want, I'm aspiring to grow, give me that opportunity. So you have to actively go out and find it. So that's your responsibility.
Sure, that's fantastic. And on collaborative leaders, one thing that I hear a lot, and it's probably from our Generation X, baby boomers and so forth, is do collaborative leaders really get things done? So maybe David, have you got a view on that?
Well, I think, as I said during the presentation, that leadership of laissez-faire leadership, collaborative leadership, and sort of highly directional, my way or the highway type leadership, it's a continuum. So none of us are really operating within one or other exclusively within those spheres. But certainly I think in terms of appealing to the millennial generation, having a more engaged, co-creative approach to work and to problem solving, etc., can help to get things done, and certainly can help to deliver the outcomes that are required, because most millennials will not respond to a laissez-faire style management approach that just leaves them sitting in the corner, nor do they want to be totally restricted by process and a sort of a highly directional leader. So you can get things done. In fact, you'll be more productive and you'll have your team more engaged if you adopt an approach of being collaborative.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Dominic, do you see that as well, that collaborative leaders actually do get things done?
I think it's a continuum, exactly like David says, and you need to operate at different places on that continuum, because you can't be collaborative all the time.
Yes.
It's all situational based, it is contextual based, and you need to do what is best for the team, best for the organization. And if you put that at the forefront, you will always come out on top.
Yeah.
I don't think there is one size that fits all. And if you say it's collaborative or nothing else, I think that's a wrong approach. I think sometimes you need to give direction. I think sometimes you need to put your foot down. And most of the times you need to get people together and brainstorm and come up with something that works for everyone. And you know, it's just a balanced approach. So that's life. It's grey. It's not black and it's not white. That's why it's grey, and that's what makes it exciting. And you know,
fantastic. Well, thank you very much, David and Dominic, for your time. I hope everyone got something out of that. And we're going to break for about 4 or 5 minutes, and Kerrie will be back in to take you through to the next part of the session about retaining millennials. So thank you very much.